Alright, well, by the time you see this video, I should already have an engine and a transmission in the car, but at the point that I'm filming this, I don't, because I'm still waiting on a couple of things from the machine shop, and it's been raining constantly over here, so I haven't really been able to do a whole heck of a lot. So for now, I'm going to be focusing on the fuel system of this car temporarily, just to knock some stuff out while I'm waiting on things. Anyway, I really can't, make any progress on those things. So with that being said, as I mentioned before, this car has no factory fuel tank installed. I bought it like that. It's not like I use the fuel tank for anything else, it's just the way it is. And instead of going out of my way to find a used fuel tank that I could use in the meantime, that would just bolt up into this car and work, I decided to go the extra mile, because these fuel tanks in these cars really aren't the greatest for like fuel slosh and stuff like that. And seeing as this car is literally 100% only going to be used for drifting, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have issues with fueling due to fuel slosh or the stock pump design or anything like that. And so what I went with is this little guy. So seeing as I'm not going to be using the factory tank, instead obviously I'm going to be running this fuel cell right here, right? And so this is the New Performance Alu cell with CFC unit. Now, unlike the radium fuel cells, this isn't really like an actual fuel cell. This is more or less just an aluminum tank to hold all the fuel in, right? But because I'm not really using this for any kind of like competition use or anything like that, I don't have to have an actual fuel cell. I really just have to have like a fuel tank. But the benefit to running this is that this little bolt-on unit right here not only has, the fuel pump hanger on it to run a conventional fuel pump hanger or fuel pump, it also has a fuel surge tank integrated into the design right here. But then if I pull it out and show you, you can see there's a little bit more going on than the regular fuel pump, because it's also got this little straw that feeds into this integrated surge tank, which is fantastic, because basically what this will do is, this is just a lift pump. It's more or less just a low pressure, low flow pump that's just going to fill this volume and keep it pretty much always just completely full of fuel, so that the other fuel pump inside of this will always have a volume to pull from, and I'll never have to worry about fuel slosh while going sideways around a track. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys with like assembly of any of this. I already went ahead and knocked it out early just to get it out of the way, because it's really not anything exciting to watch this go together. But basically what's going on here is I have this Dishworks low pressure lift pump. I forget exactly what the flow rate is. I think it's like 120 or something like that. It's good enough for feeding the Dishworks 320 pump that's inside of here, and that will actually supply the high pressure fuel to the outlet here. And these come with 10 AN and 8 AN feed and return. That's way too much for anything I'm ever going to use this engine for, so I've adapted that down to 8 AN and 6 AN, and then I'll be running 8 AN, 6 AN lines all the way forward to replace the factory lines straight to the engine. And then this right here is a fuel tank sending unit. It's more or less like a universal style that you can put in the tanks, as long as all you gotta do is just get the depth right. So this, in this case, this is a 9-inch, I think. And then I just pair that with the aftermarket gauge to read fuel level. That way I can actually see what my fuel level is, because unfortunately you can't just look through here to see your fuel level. This little plate gets in the way for whatever reason. But it's got a little rollover valve for the vent. It's got, all these good hookups for pumps. I only have one pump on the inside right here, but that's all the fuel I'll ever need for this. But it does have hookups for dual pumps inside the surge tank if you need it. But that will live right here. And then to fuel up, all I gotta do is just open up this cap, fill it up right there, and other than that, not even worry about it, because I'll have indication of the level on the front, and it'll just live back here. I've got it inside the frame rails. I want to sink it down, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and just get it bolted to the floor. It'll work just fine that way. It's just not ideal for like center of gravity, stuff like that, but I'm not really super worried about that anyway. So I'm not worried about anybody getting in a big enough crash with me to cave this in enough to damage this. So for now, it'll do just fine. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and drill some holes, get this mounted, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start running the lines forward so I can feed them up to the engine bay, and then we'll start plumbing some stuff up. Alright, now relatively soon, before this car hits the track, I'm going to be at my buddy's house for a while with it, and he knows a lot more about wiring than I do, and he's got a lot more better equipment for it than I do, so I'm not quite finishing any of this up right away. But what I've got going on is I got a 5-pin relay, just because it's what I had laying around. You could use a 4-pin relay for this as well, but basically I just have power coming through a fuse to pin 30. It'll connect to the battery, which the battery will sit right here next to the tank, so it makes it nice and easy. And then that'll send power out through 87 and split to the both fuel pumps. That way I'm just powering both at the same time, and if I got one, I got the other, and I don't gotta worry about it. And then pretty simple, just have this blue wire is the signal to turn the relay on. That's just coming off the stock fuel pump positive wire. And then the ground on this, as well as the ground off of both pumps. And the main just battery to chassis ground will all just kind of go to the same plug and all just be crimped together. And it's pretty simple that way. You know, I'm still going to be running the OEM fuel pump relay, but the relay is only powering the signal wire to turn on the much higher rated relay to turn on the much more higher amperage rated pumps. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm allowed to run the fuel line through the chassis because it'd make it a lot easier. So instead, I got to route it underneath the car. So I cut out this little ovular hole, put some edging protection around it just to make sure I don't eat through these lines. And it's just gonna slip underneath the car. And the frame rail is right here, so it's right alongside of the frame rail. I don't got to worry about it touching anything there because it'll all be secured to the frame rail. And lastly, for my fuel level sender, it's just 2 wires, and I'm using the same stock wires off the OEM fuel level sending unit. I gotta figure out which 2 exactly I want to use, but these will run all the way up through the stock wire harness up to the front of the car where the aftermarket gauge will be. Now, it's super simple. All I gotta do is give power and ground to the gauge, hook up the 2 wires that I connect to this, and the gauge should just work. Alright, now out of the car, so the feed and return lines that I routed, this is all completely unfinished, so don't worry about the fact that it's just kind of zip tied in place in a few places. But basically the routing I went with is down through the trunk, down this frame rail, and usually the stock hard lines would go this way and around here, but because these don't really, you know, want to turn quite as tight as the stock hard lines can, and I already removed those, so I'm not using them. It went this way instead, so it goes kind of through the middle of the trans tunnel. I'm gonna have to, you know, get these as tight as I can to make sure they don't fall too low or, you know, mess with anything around here. And then I went kind of right back out towards the frame rail again, over my hydro brake lines, and then just hug the frame up to the fuel rail and the fuel pressure regulator. And again, like I said, I'm gonna have to secure these much better, but don't have all the things I need for that today, so I was gonna have to hold off until later. All right, moving to the engine bay. It's a pretty simple setup. So I got a 90-degree off the 8AN feed, goes into a fitting that goes into the stock fuel rail, goes through the stock fuel rail, and then there's a company that makes a little fitting you can find on eBay pretty well or easily. That replaces the stock fuel pressure regulator, I'm pretty sure what goes right there, and just creates a 6AN fitting for it. So then I got a 90 coming off here for this pre-made line that I got with some other parts that I bought used, and it goes up right back here and fits up perfectly for the fuel pressure regulator, which is very crudely mounted to the firewall right now. I might try to fix that later, but honestly I'm not super concerned about it. Got to find a nut for this because that's missing for some reason, but you know, easy view of my fuel pressure right there. And then for the return, just comes out the bottom, 6AN straight fitting right back down into the tank. Then obviously you got to have the pressure hose for a turbo car as well, so that'll move, or that'll sit unfortunately on this side and kind of has to loop around, and this goes back to this stock vacuum solenoid valve, which it has for whatever reason. I don't know why this doesn't just go directly to the intake, but I'm sure Toyota has a reason for that, and as long as I'm running the stock ECU, I'm just going to keep with what they set up for me. Oh yeah, and I also forgot, I need to put this filter in the feed line. But I'm not going to do that right now because I am honestly running very short on time for an appointment I have. I actually have to be on the road tomorrow morning, so I gotta get this car off the jack stands, back on the ground, onto a trailer to drive it out to Charlotte tomorrow for some much needed upgrades. So I'll have to work on this after that, as well as just finishing up wiring and a bunch of stuff like that and getting this car started for the first time. So until then, if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe so you see the next one, and I'll see you guys next time.